Welcome to the Weekly Dive. I'm your host, Nate, and this is my show where I talk about things that I find interesting, usually related to music. And in this week, it's going to be about my most recent release, Figure It Out. In this video, I'm kind of going a little bit away from the technical side of things and kind of talking a little bit more about theory in the sense of song creation theory, not like music theory or sound design, but how I approach bigger projects when I'm someone that feels kind of intimidated when I'm working on bigger projects, especially stuff that involves dubstep or like big bass noises, because I know it's going to take time. And so this video, I kind of talk about my process and the headspace that I let myself be in throughout the whole thing, from the start of the project to the mixing stage and even into the mastering stage a bit. I'm not really going into like what I do for mastering or mixing, but I do that on my own right now, at least. But kind of how I give myself the opportunity to find the things I want to do in those stages. So I think that this video can be really helpful for a lot of people. I don't think there's any right one way or another way to do something. I just think these are some cool ways that I do it. And that I think if you're stuck or you feel like you don't really know what you're wanting to do, these might be some options that you could try. So give it a look. And with that, I'll pass it to producer Nate. Thank you, broadcaster Nate. Well, here I am going through my song, Figure It Out. So we're figuring out my song, Figure It Out. So in this one, I really kind of wanted to go into sort of the mental game when kind of working on music, and mental game in the sense of like how I think about the projects I'm working on. One, I want to quickly recommend Midnight Gospel if you're into any existential-y kind of stuff, life, death, drugs, peace, happiness, all that kind of stuff. Super cool. On Netflix, so check that out. It kind of inspired a lot of the sounds and ideas in this song, so I just wanted to shout that out. But basically, I think a lot of people focus on like, oh, here's how you make a bass sound, or here's how you do this, and you can hear, if you listen to the song, and I'll play a little bit in a second. It's not like any necessarily crazy unique sound design. It sounds cool. I'm really happy with how it sounds. But it's not like, oh my gosh, I've never heard that sound before. And I'm not trying to be that kind of producer. I just want to make something that feels cool. So if you haven't heard the song, here's a little bit. It's running kind of high on CPU, so don't hate me if it kind of cuts out here. Cool. So go listen to it if you haven't. It's a fun song, and the build up and the verses and all that stuff are really nice. I really like the sounds I used for that. So to take it back a second and to relate it again to cooking, like I did in one of my other videos, there's a lot of different ways you can plate a song or plate a meal, right? You can cook chicken differently, right? You can boil the chicken. You can buy the chicken from the store. You could get a microwave meal with chicken. You can literally raise chickens and then use them to like use the chicken, right? There's all these different ways to get to relatively the same end, right? You're trying to finish a song, or you're trying to plate a meal. Some people can pound out a song in 15 minutes, and I've been there too, and it's really fun and really inspiring to do those things, because you really are in that state of flow and kind of getting things going. And so I wanted to share with you guys maybe some things, if you aren't necessarily in that state of flow for those 15 minutes or, an hour, or you don't know how to get started on what relatively is like a pretty big project. This one isn't like the hugest, but, sometimes it's daunting, and I feel overwhelmed starting these bigger projects. And so over the course of, the few years I've been working on stuff, I've kind of developed a couple different theories on how to help myself get from the start to the finish. So a couple things I do right away is understanding what's going on around me. Now, the Midnight Gospel was a good show for this, but it really helped me understand timing and everything, and how much more patient I think we all can be and should be with all the stuff that we're doing. Um, I've been taking it a lot more easy. I've been a lot more relaxed, and it's helped me be a lot more calm and patient when working on songs. You know, if you have a reason a song needs to be done today, then cool. But sometimes when I'm working on a song, I'm like, oh, I really want to get this done and get this out. But then, I kind of take a step back and I'm like, well, I'm the only one that's heard this song. If it comes out today, it's not going to be like it's any different if it comes out tomorrow, because no one else has heard it. Timing is important, and I think giving yourself a little bit extra time sometimes can be helpful. But basically, what I did with this one specifically was really kind of approaching it and coming to it and working on it while it's interesting and exciting to me. I know, based on working on a lot of songs now, that eventually the song will start to wrap itself up. Eventually there will be things you don't want to add to it or things you don't want to change. I think the chisel metaphor is super good as far as like those like sculptors that would, make a sculpture out of a big chunk of concrete or whatever they would make it out of. They would say that it was always there. They just carved around it. They just made it visible. And I think music is a similar way too. With this one, it started out with these kind of plucks. And that was really cool to me. And then, I started adding these drums and these other sounds. And fun fact, that lead sound here, it's like very dramatic, almost movie-esque texture. Didn't come in till the very end. I really felt like it needed something more on top of those chords because the chords were kind of boring. So I think it's important to also, with this, not always, like, I don't export a lot of songs anymore until they're like pretty much done, because when I export things, I notice I'll listen to them a lot, and I'll kind of get burnt out on the ideas. And so if I want to hear a song again, I have to go in and work on it, which means it forces me to sit down and at least be in a position where I can continue working on this thing. And, a lot of people aren't full-time musicians or don't have the time to do things. And so understanding that it's okay to chip away at things, to come back to a project day after day is totally okay and doable. A lot of artists work on projects and albums over the span of years. So don't be afraid if it takes a little bit of time. Generally I'm putting out a song a week right now. That's pretty often for a lot of people. One thing that's important for me is that I kind of start a bunch of little projects, and then when I sit down, I kind of do whatever feels good to me at that point that I sit down. Sometimes I have goals in my day that I want to get certain things done, or I need to work on this song for this artist or this song for this other artist. And so sometimes you need to go in and do that. Sometimes when I sit down and I'm like, okay, what am I going to work on today? One, I think it's a good mentality to not really have a plan sitting down, because you just jump to whatever is interesting to you. And by inherently doing that, it will inherently be better just because it's exciting and you're going to be putting a lot more energy and care into it. When you're working on something you don't really care about, I'm sure you've all felt this, but it just kind of is like lackluster. You're kind of like, well, sure, like I guess a hi-hat could go here, or I guess this could go here. Don't do that. If it's not exciting to you, work on something else. It's like being in a bad relationship, right? If it's not fun and not good for you, leave. Like you didn't start making music to suffer. I mean, life is suffering. That's a whole other conversation, but you didn't start making music because you were like, man, I want my life to suck. You want to have fun. You want to do the thing you want to do. So keep that energy in there. If you work on a song and you force yourself to get things done that you're not excited about, why would other people be excited about them? I've put out a lot of music that I wasn't that excited about, that I put out just because I thought I was supposed to put out music, and it sucks. So be excited about your stuff. And if you're not, just work on something else. I've put a lot of energy into needing to put out a song a week, and it can be a little stressful sometimes, but if you put in enough time, it can be worth it. But by sitting down and always jumping to the next thing that's exciting can help out a lot. You know, I started with these plucks, then I went to the drums, then I went to the bass, then I went to this little vocal sound. So it's like really keeping things going. And as you add things over time, the song will naturally answer your inputs by slowly kind of putting things together. Now, understanding arrangement and understanding technique is a natural type of thing to get you better at getting to the end point. But when you're actually in it, the song will reward you by what you put into it. So kind of to recap just a little bit over the other things, you know, it's okay to not have one method of starting things. You know, you don't have to start with drums. You can cook things as many different ways as you want. You know, it's a lot of different songs like this. It's more of a process that you do over time. You know, I think with more hip hop kind of stuff, it's definitely more fast paced, right? You can throw in a couple samples, throw a couple drums down, do some things. You know, you can get a song done or a beat done in an hour or less, like pretty easily. And it's probably like pretty good, because the energy is there for that. But you also know that with a lot of that kind of music, people are cycling through hip hop a lot right now, and most genres too. But that's because everything is being made fast, right? It's sometimes things that are made fast can be really lasting, but I think, in my opinion, if you take just a little bit more time, I think you give yourself a better chance of making something last. Now, as of right now, none of my songs necessarily are like big or like lasting or anything like that. But to me, when I feel like I'm really connected to one of my songs, or I feel like I'm connected to a song by another artist, there's usually a story like that behind it. So I definitely recommend trying to be a little bit more patient when you're working on your things. It's not a race. You know, there's already Skrillex, right? He's already there. You know, Diplo's already there. All these people are already in the lead, right? You're not like, why are you can't race someone like that. But I know, and this was my metaphor I came up with when I was like a sophomore in college, but it's like the bicycle method. You know, if you just keep pedaling, you'll eventually get there, right? Like the people in the lead are going to stop pedaling at some point. And there's always going to be a point to pass them. And it's like the classic turtle in the hare analogy. And so if you keep working and keep getting things done, then you'll get there eventually. Just don't feel like you have to rush it. You know, I've been working on music for 6 or 7 years now, and there's small amounts to show for it. But I'm really happy with the things that I'm working on. I'm really happy with the friends that I have and all the things that are going on. So just be patient, take your time. It's not going to happen overnight. You know, it takes, I don't know what the term was. It takes like 10 years for an overnight success, or whatever it is. So keep that in mind. As far as understanding getting a song done once I have a song to a point where I pretty much have, you know, at least with a lot of electronic music, I like having about 2 drops, a bigger intro section, a little shorter middle section, and then the final drop being a little bit longer. In this case, I think it was twice as long as the first one, and then an outro. Once I feel pretty comfortable with the arrangement and everything is like sitting pretty cool, and I listen to it and I don't really think I want to change anything, like I'm listening to it, I'm like, you know, everything feels like it's pretty good. At that point, I know the song is pretty much done, right? All the ideas are pretty much there. Everything is I'm pretty much comfortable with. There isn't really anything else I want to add. I'm like, cool. At that point, that is when I export it. And usually what I do for my first export is I don't put anything on the master. I pretty much just do a straight export with MP3, and I upload it to SoundCloud on private, and I just walk around listening to it. Like I listen to stuff mostly with my headphone or my AirPods, or I listen to it in the car and different sets of headphones, just to kind of hear your different mix in different situations. Usually immediately I notice different things I want to change. And so I usually jot those down in my notes in my phone, and then I go in and change them, you know, different stuff, like maybe the snare is too loud in this part, so I need to automate that. Or like, what was the automation for this, right? I heard this drag too long into the drop, and so I wanted to cut that out. So keep that stuff in mind. And then what I end up doing is, after I feel pretty good about those versions and I'll export another one. The reason I do MP3 is just because it's a smaller file and I'm not really caring that much about like super high audio quality yet. Wave is technically the one you want to be exporting as usually because it's lossless, which means it won't be compressing what you already have. And you're kind of looking at my master chain right now, but what I end up doing is for that process, I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then I'll go back in, I'll do a little bit more editing, kind of clean it up a bit, and then keep doing this a few more times until I really don't feel like there's anything else I want to change. And that's just time. That's just natural timing. I tell myself, it's like I need to listen to it, check it out, feel it in different environments, feel it in different times of day, listen to it when I'm feeling different things, when I'm sad, when I'm happy, and kind of see what I might pull out of it. And then once I feel really good about it, then I know it's ready for mastering. That's when like the mix is done. And so you can see it here. I don't really want to go into my mastering chain right now. I don't really have a chain. I do it kind of uniquely for each song because I feel like each song needs different things. So I will go through mastering on my own and kind of add that just to boost everything. And I use this to make sure I know the loudness levels. This is a loudness meter, measures in LUFs. LUFs are a way to determine loudness over a large spectrum of things. Like Ableton, everything has like decibels or a volume number, but they're not measured the same inherently. So they have these different plugins to do that, so you can check it over time, over different, LUF is the same on everything because it's LUFs. So I have the song done. I have it mastered, but even at that point, I basically go through the same thing I did with the mixing, where it's like, okay, I want to change things. What do I want to have? What do I want to add here? And the funny thing is that this sound, like I was saying earlier, didn't even come until after the mastering. And so it's totally okay to be adding things later also. I think I noticed that with just these plucks and chords kind of going through with everything else, it was just too boring. It was too simple. And so I wanted to really create something that sat on top. And so I added that, right? I felt like it needed to be there, and I did it. And it really gave the song so much more for me. So I'm glad I did that. So when you're working on your songs, take your time. Try to make sure you're really giving it the energy it deserves. If you want people listening to your song a lot, you need to put the effort in. It's, if you're just gonna kind of sit there and dink around a bit, then expect people to just sit there and not really care about what you're doing. I mean, I'm not saying that's always the case, but it's just something where even if I'm like, if I don't, again, like I said, if I don't care about my song, why do I want someone else to? So be hyped about your stuff and share your stuff to other people. Kenny Beats talked about this too on his thing. It's like, if you're going to share someone your song, don't share them the version that's unmixed or unedited. And you have to tell them, oh, this is unmixed, don't worry about it. It's like, one, if you're sending it to me or like a producer, we'll understand that there's things that may not be done. So like ask people for help for things like, hey, how does the kick feel in this mix? And then, they'll listen to it and they won't worry about the other stuff that's going on. They're just going to be focusing on the kick, and they can give you advice for that. If you're going to be going in and asking, be like, oh, like it's so annoying because I used to do it too, but it's like the immediate moment you'd be like, oh yeah, check this out, but like it's not mixed all the way. No one cares. They're like, okay, whatever. Why am I listening to this then? Like, share them the final thing, because then they're also going to be impressed. And if you're wanting like validation that your song is good, shoot them a message. Be like, yo, hey, I'm working on this song. I can't tell if it's something I should pursue. Do you like it? Do you like where it's at? Do you think I should continue it? Like, that's how you should approach it, rather than saying, oh, well, this, it's not mixed or whatever. When in reality, you probably did mix it. You're just not sure if your mix is good. And if you want to know stuff about that, definitely do a lot of like A/Bing. Load in a different audio file and listen to that one, and then listen to your mix and your master, and try to get yours to sound texturally like the other song. That would be similar. Or like if you're a DJ that you would be mixing a song into, I've gotten into a more of a headspace where I think about how my songs will mix into each other, because that's the kind of performer I want to be. So I'm not caring as much about A/Bing all the time. But when I'm in the car or I'm listening in headphones, I always make sure I start by listening. This is actually another piece of advice for that. Listen to some other songs that you know are really good quality first, and then listen to your song to kind of get a taste of where yours might kind of play. And that's kind of that concept of A Bing. But, you know, we all inherently want people to like our songs. And so if it's not matched up similarly, if they're on, if your song is going to get on Spotify playlist, you want the listener to be able to seamlessly go from song to song and not hate themselves when they listen to it or skip it or need to turn up the volume or do those things. So again, take your time. It's okay to work on things over a period of days. I think Skrillex was working on stuff like this. I do a similar thing, not saying I'm like Skrillex by any means, but it's like the beginning of the week, I'll usually start a couple different projects. And as the week progresses, certain ones I end up pushing through and kind of getting done, and certain ones I just kind of let go. They just fall into the abyss of random project files on my hard drives. But by starting a bunch of small things, when you sit down, when you wake up and you come and sit down at your computer and you go and you open your recent and you're kind of looking down, I don't know if you guys can actually see this right now. Sometimes my recording software is a little buggy, but let's say you're looking at your recent sets. You know, you'll see other projects that are done and you don't really want to go to those. You know, you may not necessarily feel the motivation to start a new one, but if you have some small ones that you kind of got a little bit of the way, it might be exciting. You're like, oh, like I forgot about this one. What does this have in it? And then boom, it's like, oh, I could add a bass here, or I could add this. And that feeling of like, oh, I could do this. It's like, that's inspiration. And you're giving yourself the opportunity to be in that place at that time. So I'm happy to explain other things with this further. I know I'm trying to give a very broad sort of answer to some of these issues in hopes that many people can kind of pull things from it. But if you're working on your project, or you feel like you have writer's block, or you feel like you have all these things you don't know how to do, you don't know how to get started, you don't know how to get through things, you're intimidated by a big project or things like that, I'm happy to help out. Please reach out to me. I'll give you extra guidance. I'm happy to suggest some things, maybe give you some sample project files to kind of look at and kind of see what I'm doing to kind of get going. But again, you know, I start small. You gotta understand that it's gotta be a foundation, right? You gotta create something in the base to work for, then you kind of build up from it. But trust in the fact that eventually, if you put enough into it, it'll be there. It'll get done. So just keep working. Again, this was my song, Figure It Out. Please go check it out if you haven't yet. And with that, I'm going to send it back to Broadcast 8. Thanks, guys. Well, thank you, producer Nate. Well, this was my song, Figure It Out. I hope you guys maybe learned something or found something that you could take into one of your next projects. Again, I want to be a resource that can help you guys, so please reach out, like and subscribe if you want to see more videos and more stuff like this. Once I get to 100 subscribers, I plan to start putting out project files and other drum packs and things like that. So encourage your friends to maybe check out a video too. And I am also more active probably on social media than I am on YouTube, at least following the comments or things like that. So if you have any questions or things you want to be explored further, also feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or Twitter as well. Both of those are at HeyNateOfficial. And with that, I hope you guys are staying safe. I'm hanging out. It's a sunny day today. I'm going to go to the river. So with that, I will talk to you guys next week. Peace.